My name is Ellen Ferreira. I am president of Democrats of the Red Rocks, and we are very, very happy to have you all here today. We welcome you. We welcome our candidates. This is great. Thank you for being here, and thank you for caring about an office that does not frequently get headlines, but it affects every single Arizona household every single month. The Arizona Corporation Commission regulates our utilities, our electricity, our gas, our water, and more. The decisions made by the Corporation Commission determine how much we pay, how reliable our power is, how fast we transition to clean energy, how well consumers are protected from corporate interests. So tonight, we are proud to hear from the Democratic candidates who are running to put people before profits, transparency before backroom deals, and Arizona's future ahead of special interests. And we have all seen how that works in action. The Corporation Commission has 5 seats. Right now, they are occupied by 5 Republicans. There have been Democrats on the Corporation Commission in recent years. We had Anna Tovar, we had Sandra Kennedy, but they are no longer on the Corporation Commission. And we need to really examine what's happening there and to promote the candidates that you will hear from tonight. So, what we're going to do, well, first, let me just say one of the important things and why we're doing this program now is because we would like you to sign candidate petitions. If you're not familiar with candidate petitions, they appear on a site on the Secretary of State's website called eQual, E-Qual. And all candidates that you are qualified to vote for, meaning where you live, that depends on who you'll see on the eQual site. All candidates are listed on the eQual website and are needing your signatures on their petitions so that they are able to run for office. I'm going to show you what the eQual site looks like right now, and that way you'll know what it is. So I put the instructions of how to get to this website. It's the first thing in the chat. If you look into the chat, you'll see the eQual instructions. So you go to this site called eQual, run by the Secretary of State. Scroll down a little bit, and you can either sign a candidate's nominating petition and or you can contribute a $5 qualifying contribution. Candidates that are running clean, which means they are taking money from the state and will not be raising a lot of money on their own, and they can explain that further if they want to. Um, they need a $5 contribution from you in order to qualify to run clean. So when you get onto these sites, you'll need to put in your driver's license number and your house and all that stuff. And then you can sign one petition and then you can go, it'll say, do you want to go back and sign another? And you just write yes. It'll take you back to the screen. You try to find the candidate you're looking for, and and then you just continue on. You will only see candidates that you are qualified to actually sign for. So you will not see candidates from all over the state, but you will see Katie Hobbs, Adrian Fontes, Chris Mays, and all of those people. Um, so that is why, I mean, one of the reasons we're having this forum tonight is because we want our population to be educated. When you go onto the eQual site, you will see 5 names of people running for the Corporation Commission, but there are only 2 openings. So we want you to be aware of who is running and what their qualifications are, and then you know who you want to sign for. That does not obligate you to vote for that person. It just helps them get qualified to run. So I think that was what I mainly wanted to tell you guys tonight. And now I would like to introduce you to the three candidates. There are five listed on the Equal site, as I just said. However, we could not get in touch with the other two candidates. I don't know if they're still running. I don't know where they are, but they're really hard to find because we've looked and we cannot find them. We cannot locate them. So we have three candidates with us tonight. What we will do is ask each one, starting with Jonathan Hill, and then Clara Pratt, and then Derek Espadas, to have spend 4 minutes telling us about themselves, introducing themselves, talking about their qualifications. And then, if you have questions, please put them in the chat and we will read those to the candidates. They will have 2 minutes to respond to questions, but we're going to be a little flexible. If this is a really complicated question and you need more information or they need to go a little longer, that's okay. We're going to be flexible. I would love to see us finish this up by about 6:15 or 6:30 at the latest because it is dinner time in Arizona. And so we all have other things that we wanted to get on with in our lives. So without further ado, let me introduce Jonathan Hill, who this is his second time running for the Corporation Commission. And he has been to Sedona twice, once to our door breakfast and once to our candidate picnic. So, Jonathan, welcome.
Okay, well, thank you, Ellen. Thank you, everyone else, for coming today. I see lots of familiar names in the crowd. So, yeah, my name's Jonathan Hill. This is my second time running for the commission. Hopefully, you saw me around last time. Um, I was, really proud of the campaign that we put together. We had 150 events across the state. We hit all the legislative districts, all the counties. But at the end of the day, obviously, we came up a little bit short. There were a lot of other elements at play, we'll say, in the 2024 election that I think didn't work in our favor. But looking back on that campaign, me and my team thought if only we had known at the beginning what we knew at the end, all the things that were working really well for us, I think we could have done an even better job. And so that's why I decided to throw my hat in the ring a second time. So if you aren't familiar with me, if you haven't seen me speak before, my background is not in politics. This is only my second time running for anything. My day job for the last 20 years has been working at Arizona State University on the Tempe campus as a spacecraft engineer. So I worked on the cute little Mars rovers, Spirit and Opportunity, that look like Wall-E from the Pixar movie. Also work on a Mars orbiter, an asteroid mission, and then we just launched about a year ago a mission to Jupiter that is currently on its 7-year journey out to Jupiter. So I started out on those missions on the engineering side. My master's degree is in aerospace engineering, but over time I really fell in love with the science that these missions were doing, which is primarily geology. And so I switched tracks, and in 2022 I got my PhD in geological sciences. And so that's the big thing that I hope to bring to the commission, that engineering experience when it comes to power generation, distribution, water distribution systems, but also the geology side. In so many places in Arizona, groundwater is such a critical issue, which is partially regulated by the Corporation Commission. And so I think it'd be helpful to have an actual commissioner, not just research staff, but actually a commissioner on the bench who knows how to read a hydrologic survey, who knows how to read a geologic map, and help determine for themselves whether there's enough water to keep pumping in certain areas. So, and then the other big issue that I'm running on is just affordability. Everyone throughout the state has seen their energy prices, their water prices, their natural gas prices just skyrocket over the last decade. And as Ellen alluded to, the commission has been under the control of the Republican majority for 30 years now. And in that time, energy costs have far outpaced inflation. And really that's just because the Republican-led commission keeps approving these double-digit rate increases. These utility companies monopolies can't raise their rates unless the commission approves it. But they keep approving it, and so they keep coming back for more rate increases. And so I think we need Democratic commissioners on the commission who are going to really look hard at these requests and turn them down if they're not properly justified. So that's me in a nutshell.
Okay, terrific. Thank you very much. Next, we will hear from Clara Pratt. Clara,
Hello.
welcome.
Hi, thank you, everybody, and good evening, and thanks for taking the time this evening. My name is Clara Pratt, and I'm running for the Arizona Corporation Commission as well. I'm a proud member of the Navajo Nation, and I've spent my career working to create jobs and economic opportunity, particularly in rural and tribal areas of Arizona. I personally know how valuable utilities are because I grew up without them for the most part of my life, without running water or electricity. So we had to haul water in our rural community, and I remember doing homework by kerosene lantern. I still really like that smell. They're hard to find now. But in my little town of Sessaana, which is right on the Gallup, New Mexico, Arizona border, that was everyday life. And so that experience has really shaped me. And it's why when I'm elected, God willing, to the Arizona Corporation Commission, I want to really hold utility companies accountable to deliver affordable, reliable water and electricity to everyone, and preferably clean and reliable, affordable electricity and water, not just big cities or mega projects. And I will also oppose these out of control rate hikes that we've seen that have forced many families to really decide if they're going to pay their utility bill, if they're going to be able to afford that extra prescription, or to put food on their table. And these are the stories that I'm hearing around the state. These are real people facing real decisions about how they're going to afford the out of control utility rate hikes that we've seen. I've had the privilege to work under 3 United States presidents and 4 Navajo Nation presidents. I co-founded Navajo Power Public Benefit Corporation and our subsidiary Navajo Power Home. And through that company, we've been able to connect hundreds of Navajo and Hopi homes to electricity for the first time ever. We just bypassed our 500 home mark this last 2 weeks ago. And I run a small business, another small business that has also worked to bring high-tech infrastructure and jobs to rural Arizona. So if we don't elect new leaders to the Arizona Corporation Commission, we're going to expect a lot of the same, and our bills are going to continue to go up. Unfortunately, the commission has approved more than $1 billion in higher utility rates for us, for you and me, just since 2023, which is an insane amount when you think about it. So if you feel like your utility bill has gotten out of control, you're right, it has. Every single one of us are paying $1 billion more, a billion with a B, more than we paid but a few years ago. So we, the voters, we have an opportunity to make our voices heard. And this commission is an extremely powerful commission, 5 people, 5 bodies out there that are making decisions on behalf of all of Arizonans that impact everyday life. We can't keep doing business as usual. We have to think smarter and harder and find solutions to both our water and our energy and our infrastructure crises. And that means we need to change. So as a mom, as a small business owner, as a proud public servant, and someone who's working in the energy industry currently, I will always fight to protect everyday Arizonans and not just the big industries. So I really look forward to the dialogue tonight. Thank you.
Good, good. That's great. Thank you for being here. We appreciate it. Next, we have Derek Espadas. He will tell us about his campaign. Jenny Hurst, by the way, is doing the technology for us today. And this is her first time doing this for DOOR. So she's doing a great job. But if you see a little bit of a lag, we threw this at her at the last minute. She's now learning how to put the timer on as well as how to spotlight people. So just please be patient. Jenny's doing a great job for us. Thank you. Okay, Derek, let's hear from you.
Yeah, so I'm Derek Espadas. I'm down in Tucson, Arizona. I am an accountant, an educator, and community organizer. So the quick educational rundown is, you know, graduated from Pima Community College, got my degrees in accounting at the U of A, got my MBA at Syracuse, and I'm actually on sabbatical right now from working on my doctoral work at Case Western Reserve. Because this campaigning takes a lot of time. And so it takes a lot of time to travel around the state. I think I was in Sedona last month. We had a small gathering at the Sedona Village Hotel, which was super cute. So got to meet a couple of people in Sedona there. I plan to be back, but everything that's been said, I agree. I want to fight for climate justice. I think a lot of voices get ignored, and really, I think that's a big part of what's happening. Every corporation here is for profit except SRP, and they have their own special issues. And they operate without competition, yet they complain that they can't make any money. And it's not their fault. But my position is if you have no competition and you can't make money, that seems to be a you problem. That how many of us as small business owners would love to be I would love to be the only accountant in Arizona. I would make so much money. And I wouldn't be able to blame that on anyone. But I'm also working a lot with organizations across the state. So I take a very activist role. I'm at the ACC meetings. I'm at the various data center uh, council meetings, speaking against them. I'm there alongside with various protests out on the streets with people. And a lot of that has to do with I'm kind of uncomfortable with being a politician. So my solution to that is to be a part of rather than show up and give a speech and disappear. So I'm building communities and relationships across the state. Just last week, after finally we got a win against the data centers in Chandler, I showed up for another Phoenix social, and people already knew me because we protested together and we spoke out against data centers. And, one of my favorite things at the end of the night, people were saying, so glad and look forward to the next protest with you. So I am, if you're looking for someone that's more active, that's going to be me. If you are kind of looking for status quo, I'm not the person for you. And I'm not apologetic about it. If you want to see change, because one of the changes, and Jonathan and Clara mentioned it too, there's this problem going on, not only with the different commissions and the ACC but they're the voices who get listened to. If you show up to an ACC meeting, half the room is suits, the lawyers, and the other half are the people. And with the last ACC hearing regarding one of the data centers and TEP, it was a 25,000% difference between people opposed to the data center and those for the data center. But still, they listen to the few voices that chose the data centers. And they hide behind the line of things must maintain a balance. But the system is already out of balance. And so for me, I'm doing the action now. I'm being aggressive about it because currently consumers do not get their voices heard. It's the corporations. And I know it's very odd to hear an accountant talking against the corporations. I'm very proud that Tucson Electric Power really does not like me. I have several op-eds that we go back and forth on down here in Tucson. But one of the things to kind of clarify I agree that they're going to keep coming back to ask for money. The only caveat to that is with the next rate increase that TEP has put in, there's an automatic rate increase that allows them to avoid the ACC altogether and just increase rates automatically every year. And so I'm part of a coalition that's fighting against that. I will continue to fight against that. And that's what I'm looking forward to doing, to serving the people when elected to the Corporation Commission.
All right, good. Thank you very much. We have three excellent candidates. Oh my gosh.
Just beat
That's
it.
interesting. I've never heard that before. All right, why don't we take questions now? rather than type oh, here's one from Toby. Um, I think we'd be fine if if you just raise your hand, either electronically or otherwise. The first question is for Toby. The question is for Jonathan. Um, and I guess it's really not relevant to the other candidates. So for Jonathan, you said you learned a lot from running your last campaign. Can you tell us what you learned and how you're going to use that information to run and win in 2026?
Yeah, that's a great question. So one of the things we learned, well, we learned a number of things. One of them was we needed to get started so much earlier. And so, our campaign is already off at the races. 2 months ago, we were holding a press conference in front of the state capitol to bring attention to all the affordability issues. We've been, submitting op-eds and attending town halls across the state, raising money to fund all this, and just generally getting an earlier start to build a better foundation. Another thing we've really worked on is the messaging. When I started last time, we were messaging kind of the typical approach of past Democrat Corporation Commission candidates in advocating for clean energy, obviously, solar, wind, geothermal, and that works really well for Democratic audiences. But when I was in front of independent or Republican audiences, they primarily wanted to talk about the affordability issues. And I found that we were able to change the minds of a lot of Republicans, and get them to support our campaign when we talked about how we were going to address the affordability issues. And so we kind of found that winning message, but we found it a little late. And so that's something we've been focusing on really strongly from the get-go. And the third is just building coalitions. So with this office, so few people know what it is that when you go out, you have to educate people before you can campaign. And turns out, you really have to, as a candidate, you really have to choose one or the other. You can educate people or you can campaign. You really can't do both simultaneously. And so I've been working with a lot of groups around the state to get them to take that education piece and to work that education piece for us, so that then when we go and talk to their members, we talk to their supporters, we can focus on campaigning and they already know what the office is. So
Interesting. So, surprising to hear that you say that affordability is not a Democratic hoax. Is that correct?
it's a real word.
And that the Republicans were concerned about that. Kind of interesting. Thank you. Thank you, Jonathan. Kathy Kinsella, you have your hand up.
Thank you, Ellen. Yes, this was a little too complicated to put into the chat. Um,
Okay.
this is for all three of the candidates. I don't know if you've been following some of the individual rate applications that have gone in, but there was one here in Sedona that has really brought what the Corporation Commission does to us on a very personal level. Arizona Water Company put in a storage tank and booster station. And this has been, I think this was first identified, the need for that in like 2012. And it took, many years to bring that to fruition for a variety of reasons. It's out on 179. The cost of that tank came to $20 million post-COVID inflation, building material spikes, all of those factors. So $20 million, an Arizona Water Company put in, obviously, an application that included in their rate increase the cost of building that tank to improve their service across their entire service area. The Arizona Corporation Commission, in reviewing the case, did a couple of interesting things. Although the applicant did not ask for there to be a separation of costs due to that one tank, the Arizona Corporation Commission felt it was in their purview, and I believe they stepped way outside of their line, out their lane, their boundaries there. They decided to put $14 million of the $20 million across all of the ratepayers and segregate $6 million just for the city of Sedona. So that's number one, that they stepped outside the bounds of the application, which I did not think they had the right to do. But number two, in doing so, they created a narrative of their own, which was that, Sedona has this highfalutin demands. And because of that, they're going to pay this, this portion and not the rest of customers. So again, stepped outside the bounds. Two, created their own narrative for the negative of some of their constituents. And three, really broke with history in terms of creating different classes of ratepayers within the same jurisdiction. So could you please, each of the three of you, speak to those 3 points?
Why don't we start with Clara?
Thank you, Kathy. No, I think that is extremely, extremely important. And yes, I've been following some of the applications that have come before the ACC in the last year. And there have been a few times that there's been significant, in my opinion, overstep of the ACC's jurisdiction and role. Because of the way the ACC is created as a constitutional body, they have very little in terms of a checks and balance and oversight. The voters, we are basically the checks and balance, right? So we're the ones that have to come out. But this idea of bifurcating ratepayers and putting them in different classes, and I said something earlier that I think really resonates, is the lack of planning by these institutions should not necessitate an emergency on our part as the ratepayer, right? I mean, we can say those things and we know that that's true, but what are we going to do to fix it? And I think what the Corporation Commission, the current Corporation Commission, has done is the exact opposite of that. They are discouraging renewable energy targets. They're discouraging things that would actually create better, more affordable solutions in pursuit of some sort of false hoax, to use that word, hoax, that somehow coal and oil and natural gas are going to save us all. Now, I went to University of Arizona and I got my business degree, and economics 101, right? You don't take away choices and expect prices to come down. So I think first and foremost, we need to encourage our industry and our utilities to continue buying renewable sources, because it's the right thing to do for the planet, but it's also the right thing to do for ratepayers. So I think, speaking to your point, Kathy, there's multiple pieces that we could go down the rabbit hole on, but your assessment is really spot on about this overstep and where the Corporation Commission's roles really should lie.
Okay, good. Thanks. Derek?
Yeah, so to follow up on that, what my observations have been at these meetings is that there is a lot of talk about the sanctity of the Arizona Corporation Commission, and they only keep themselves within a purview when it's convenient. But so on the last open meeting they had, which was a 12-hour lovely meeting, they were, and I saw something come up in the chat about it, they were talking to the lawyers from Springerville regarding the lava fields. They were treated in a completely different way and had it sent back. But when the Tucson Project Blue case was brought forward under the same arguments, and it was sent back to Springerville with the comment that it should be community-based decision. When it came to a similar case in Project Blue, people were chastised. There was a representative from ADQ who was also chastised. They said, well, you are not an elected official. We are elected. We hold the trust of the people. And they chastised the appointed official for entering comments and they told him, you are only appointed. So there
What
are,
is ADQ?
excuse me?
You said
ADQ?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What is
So they're kind of
Well,
off
that's the
rails.
Arizona Department of Environmental Quality.
Okay, thanks. Sorry.
So they kind of run their own rules. There are no checks. They're their own checks. There's no balance. And so and I forget who mentioned it before, that's why it requires a coalition, not only with the people to continually put pressure, but also working with the legislature. One of the things I want to take a look at is something called the Certificate of Necessity and Convenience, which gives each company a monopoly, but also retracts the power of the Attorney General from certain clauses So these monopoly companies get to run without any oversight. And that's something to work. And I've begun speaking with some of the legislators about it, that has to be removed to bring in checks and balances.
Okay, good. Thank you. Okay, Jonathan, why don't you take a crack at that?
Yeah. So, I mean, I agree with everything that's been said. Unfortunately, Kathy, your experience up in Sedona is not unique. We're seeing similar, oversteps as you mentioned, similar, lack of input from the public, um, passing along, large kind of emergency, rate increases across the state, and especially with private water companies. I forget the exact number. There's 400 something private water companies, I think, throughout Arizona, and almost without exception, they are a mess. The commission tends to focus on the big energy companies, and the water companies kind of fall by the wayside. And so, I think focusing on these water companies, making it you know clearer about what's expected of them, and make sure that they stay updated on all their requirements. Like you said, it was that the need for that facility was identified back in 2012 or something. Why was nothing done about it for a decade? And the commission has quality oversight, as well as price oversight.
Mhm.
Another thing that I think is really important is that the commission decades ago used to have a standard that when they were deciding a rate case or other case related to a certain community, they would hold meetings, their actual meetings in those communities, to make it easier for the people to provide feedback, to discuss their concerns with the project. However, long ago, when the Republican majority took over, that has not been the case. They only hold their meetings in their hearing room down in Phoenix, and makes it very hard for people to drive all the way from Sedona to let them know about their concerns. And so that's something that I would really look forward to doing, is bringing some of those meetings into the communities where they're happening, so to make it easier for people to provide feedback on these rate cases.
Good. That makes a lot of sense. All right, thank you. Speaking of the commissioners themselves, we have a direct question from Michelle Lambo. Are there any ethical or legal obstacles preventing the ACC, the Corporation Commission members, from holding financial interests in the utility companies that they are regulating? Is there any personal financial transparency required of ACC members? Another good question. Clara?
Yes. So the commissioners are required to disclose any financial interest that they may have in any of the entities that they regulate. So if, for example, I mentioned Navajo Power Public Benefit Corporation, if I were to become a commissioner, I would have to be very transparent about that. And if that entity were to become before the commission, you have to disclose there's a conflict here. I can't talk on this specific issue. So there are things there, but to Derek's point, they're self-policing in many ways. So how strictly they adhere to that, there has been ethics complaints that have been brought forth that have really gone nowhere because of the majority that's in power right now. So another question that we've gotten asked, I've gotten asked is, well, there's only 2 seats. So 2 seats, you're still in the minority, even if we get 2 Democrats in there. Yes, but as Jonathan likes to bring up, that each, because of Sandra Kennedy, each commissioner has the authority to subpoena and to ask more in-depth questions so that there is transparency. And it's also building a bridge to hope that, not just in 2026, but beyond, that we continue to erode into that Republican majority.
Mm-hmm. Okay, good. That's it. Anything to add to what
I
Clara said?
so I became aware of the Arizona Corporation Commission through a assignment in at the U of A. So, and I hope Clara will join me as saying the U of A as much as possible during this time. Bear down. And one of the things I thought was hilarious, and this is as a student, just looking into it, the ethics explicitly state that commissioners are not allowed to be involved at fundraising with the power companies. But at the time, the commissioners, every single one of them, there were a different set of commissioners, all had pictures of themselves at fundraisers with APS and TEP. And again, they police themselves. So what do we expect? Now I will say, in observing the ACC, and this kind of hurts me to say, and I have let her know, in my opinion, the most, and I use the phrase wackadoodle of all the commissioners, is Rachel Walden. However, when she's on the dais, she follows procedures and she asks questions. The Project Blue TEP rate case, she was dissenting voice. So I do think there's room to persuade. I do think, and Leah Marquez Peterson is supposed, in talks with people in the community, she's supposed to be the the moderate of them. So there's if we can get Kevin Thompson and Nick Myers off the ACC, I think you will see incredible change. Because Kevin Thompson is the chair, he decides who gets to speak. And in every case, the lawyers' voices are what you hear. You do not get to hear the voice. They rearranged the agenda so that we were there for that 12-hour meeting last, and that people had to leave because they have to work, they have to go to school. Um, so they know how to manipulate things to limit people's voices.
Okay. Anything to add, Jonathan, or should we move to the next question?
Yeah, I'll just quickly add that, that's the question was sort of getting at like these official conflict of interests. And unfortunately, with the commission, you have a lot of these unofficial, I'll call them conflicts of interest. There is just a well-known revolving door problem of commissioners coming from the utility industry and then returning to the utility industry after they serve. So Commissioner Thompson, for example, um, I'll often be fair and acknowledge that he also is a mechanical engineer. He has like 20 years of experience. So there is an engineer's voice on the commission. Unfortunately, he got that 20 years of engineering experience at Southwest Gas and has not dissented on a single Southwest Gas rate increase the entire time he has been on the commission. And I fully expect that as soon as he leaves office, one way or the other, that he'll return to a rather cushy job at Southwest Gas that we will all pay for through our natural gas prices. And so I think there needs to be much more ethics policing at the commission. And as been brought up, that the commission is really so powerful because the Arizona State Constitution separates them. They are not accountable to the governor. They are not accountable to the legislature. They're not accountable to the judiciary. They act, even though it's unofficial, they act as their own branch of government. And one of the bad pieces about this, self-policing wise, is when Commissioner Thompson was elected, I think it was only 21 days into his term, he flew to New York and met with APS investors and publicly told them, don't worry, Arizona is open for business. Which you have to remember, the commission is supposed to be judges. And so imagine a judge in a criminal or civil case going out meeting with one of the sides independently and tell them, don't worry, I'm for you. Completely unethical. And sure enough, Anna Tovar filed an ethics complaint, but then the commission voted on it. And on a 4-to-1 basis, they dismissed the complaint. So that tells you a lot.
That definitely tells you a lot. Oh my gosh. Okay, we've got a question here from Bev Hedden. Bev is from Cottonwood. She says she's been following the Lava Run solar, wind, and storage project in Apache County. What are your thoughts about this to any or all of you? I don't know what that is, so I have not been following that, but I'm guessing that you guys do. So, Clara,
I'm fairly.
Derek,
Oh, go ahead,
who
Claire.
would like to start with that one?
Yeah, so it's a 500 megawatt solar facility that's been put in place up in Apache County. Uh, I guess it's 450 megawatt for solar and 500 for wind. It is interesting. I think it comes from a developer from outside of the state. There's been a lot of community concerns and questions specifically about that project. We know that the coal plant that's outside of St. John's right there, it's scheduled for decommissioning. So I think there's a real hunger and a desire in Apache County in particular to look at alternatives. But one thing I think is super important as we seek to replace old assets that may be coal based or what have you, that we don't repeat some of the same mistakes that extractives did. I mean, just because it's green doesn't mean it can't be rife with folks taking value out without putting a lot of community value in. And we've certainly seen that on the Navajo Nation. We lost our power generating station, which is really sad, is bittersweet, right? A great environmental win, but hundreds of jobs that were lost in that deconstruction and closure of that asset. So, in regards to the lava run in particular, there's a lot of questions still that are swirling about from community that I don't think have been fully addressed. But by and large, in Apache County, Navajo County, in particular, because that's where I'm familiar, and I'm in Coconino County. I'll be in Sedona on Sunday, doing a radio show, so I'll be around all day Sunday too, so I can touch base with you guys as well. But yeah, I think there's just you have to do things the right way. Just because it's solar or wind or geothermal or hydro doesn't mean it's automatically going to be ethical and clean and a good thing for the community. We still need to look at community benefits, usage of resources, what the footprint is going to be, how long the asset's going to be in place. Typically, these things are in place for about 30 years. Well, what does the reclamation look like as well? So once that happens, you got to come in and make it better than it was when you came and found it. It's like the hiking rule, leave it better than when you found it, right?
Mm-hmm. Good, good. Derek?
I'm just laughing because an accountant, there's a workaround on that that's used all the time, unfortunately, with mines. But I'm actually familiar with this case, and I was present at the ACC when they handled a part of it. I happened to be just traveling through the area one day and I saw the posters against it, and so I stopped off at a coffee shop to talk to people about it. And what most of the community wants is to just leave the area untouched. I'm a big proponent for renewable energy, and I do agree with Claire, like just because we have something renewable doesn't mean that it can't be taken advantage of a community. Um, I just think of kind of like the Home Depot solar panel salespeople that I don't trust. So they're still keeping an eye on renewables, but I'm very in favor of this community keeping open land as well as it's their community. I do not feel I have the right as someone living in Tucson, not knowing how their lives are up there, saying, no, 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 you must have these renewables. The wind tower generation, there were questions about did they have FAA approval? Were they too high? That was a question, but by and large, the community was against it. Now, what did transpire is kind of part of the typical, and I know I'm talking really badly about lawyers, so I hope none of you are lawyers, but I'm going to keep talking badly. What they do is they segment a project purposely. So at all different levels, at the ACC, at county, it's at municipal, they say, no, 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 you can only look at this part. And so what got approved was a transmission line, or it got sent back. It actually got sent back for Springerville to talk about. But this is very typical. They say you can only look at this part. Okay, but why are we putting a transmission line if we don't intend to put something at the end of that? And so it's just something part of the process to keep a look at, and it's used against communities to benefit corporations.
Mm-hmm. Okay, interesting. Jonathan?
Yes, excuse me. I'll just add that, I've been around to a lot of these, small rural communities that are potentially hosting large energy projects. And one of the concerns and complaints that I heard a lot from them was that there was no benefit in it for them. So I met with a group led by the mayor up in Colorado City, and there was a plan to put a large wind plant just barely outside the city limits. And the whole town was very much against it because all that power was going to be shipped off basically to Salt Lake City. And the people in Colorado City were not going to benefit from it at all. So they were going to live with it. That's a beautiful area. If you haven't been up there, it's just south of Zion, and that beautiful view was going to be blocked. And so they were giving up all this, their view, the potential to expand the city in the future and develop that land, expand into that land. They were giving that up, but they were receiving no benefit from it. And so I think that's something where the Corporation Commission can kind of establish expectations for these projects, where if you're going to go into an area, you have to provide some sort of benefit to the local population. You can't just take all, and it's something that has happened throughout our history, and it's happening with the coal plants. You exploit a rural area and ship all the benefits into the urban areas that don't have to pay any of the costs associated with it. And so, like I said, I think that's something that should be sort of uh, a mental change at the commission, establishing these norms, establishing these expectations for projects like these, to be more responsive to the communities.
Okay, good. Thank you. All right, Benjamin Need had a question. He would like to hear from each of you on two topics that are at opposite ends of the energy spectrum: balcony or plug-in solar and enhanced geothermal. I can sense we're getting a little technical here, but okay, Clara, do you want to start?
Sure, thank you. Yeah, so I think on balcony plug-in, I think anything that increases the accessibility and the approachability of solar is good.
So could you explain what that is a little? Balcony plug-in for
Yeah, it's
people?
where it's instead of putting like, solar, having the need for a big infrastructure on your home for solar, you could have like a smaller panel that essentially could plug into your existing system. So you don't need to do a bunch of retrofitting and things
Ah,
like that. So for that piece of it, I just think that anything we can do to make solar accessible, make renewables more accessible. I'm a big fan of net metering. Of course, we know that utilities have gone away from net metering because it takes away from their control. And you've heard of the great stories of people who initially got solar and they're like, yeah, the utility company was paying me because made so much energy. Like that's a great problem to have, but it wasn't a huge hit with our utility companies. So you've seen a scale back on net metering. But the technology has evolved and changed and improved so much over even the last 10 years that a lot of times when you hear individuals on our current CORPCOM talk about how solar is a non-starter, it's too expensive, their brain is still stuck in like 1996. We've come a long way from that time. Batteries are extremely reliable. So I think anything that helps to demystify those types of things. And then for enhanced geothermal, I think there's just a world of unknowns with enhanced geothermal that hasn't been fully explored yet. It's still an emerging technology. I think of solar as less of an emerging technology. It's proven. We've got huge utility scale out there. If you've driven the road from Kingman to Vegas, you've seen those big fields out there generating lots of electricity. With enhanced geothermal, it's less of a done deal. There's also hydro that is there's a number of hydro projects that are being proposed around northern Arizona that are also kind of, people are skeptical for the right reasons, like, well, that's never been done before. Why are you doing it on our land? Why are we the guinea pigs? So I think there's a healthy amount of skepticism around some of these emerging technologies that need to be further fleshed out.
Okay, thank you. Jonathan?
Yeah, so I would totally agree with Clara that enhanced geothermal, where it's much more invasive than what you would consider a typical geothermal plant. And so I think from a geology point of view, you need to be careful about what you're introducing to the environment. and I think there's some promise there. But yeah, it needs to be fleshed out more. And that's something that, and you see a similar thing with small modular reactors, the small nuclear reactors, where they potentially have a lot of promise in certain applications, but they've never really been demonstrated. We don't really know, how are people going to deal with the expended fuel that comes from them. We really haven't seen the safety systems demonstrated, and so rightfully so, a lot of Arizona um, utility companies are they're interested in these emerging technologies, but they're also, I think, rightfully cautious. And that's where I disagree a little bit with, if you listen to Commissioner Thompson and Myers talk about small modular reactors, oh, they're all in, and that's going to save us, and that's going to make all this, Green New Deal stuff irrelevant. Um, but you talk to the utility companies, and they're very cautious, and like I said, rightfully so. So, and as for the balcony solar, I think that's a really good low entry way to augment your power. And unfortunately, the utility companies are actively making it more difficult. It's very, they make it as difficult as possible to add more established solar systems to homes, but they're going to make the balcony solar even more difficult for people. And so I think that's where, again, the commission can step in and basically say you're required to allow these technologies and for people to use them.
Okay. Interesting. Thanks. Derek?
So as far as enhanced geothermal, I'm going to call Jonathan to deal with that. So,
The geologist, right?
yes. As far as like the balcony or the plug-in solars, that's currently considered like an appliance.
Yeah.
However, there are restrictions on what you can do. You have to still like it. A balcony system is likely not going to support your energy needs. And like Jonathan mentioned, like there's obstacles to getting full solar that the utility companies don't want. Uh, as a consumer, I hate that in Tucson, if we go full solar, we still have to pay TEP. That makes no sense, especially with all the rhetoric from the commission about maintaining an open and free market. Charging me for something I do not use is not an open and free market. So down in Tucson, we're looking at community power of just kicking out TEP altogether, where it's a problem. I think a lot from the consumer side. If you look at your electric bill, it's not just one amount. There's like 15 different items. And what affects that is the different concessions and taxes that have been used and made a lot of times to rearrange where funding goes and what things have where they're supposed to go, where they don't. But again, trying to convince the ACC of that in its current form is the problem, not necessarily the mode of energy we choose, but the elected officials that get chosen to voice their opinion. They just removed $50 million from energy help for low income people from APS. So that's one of the things where getting some of these appliance-based issues could be helped, but it's not something that philosophically the current makeup of the ACC wants to engage in.
Okay, thank you. Marianne Kenny is asking, what can the Corporation Commission do to help regulate internet service? During this Zoom, her internet went down. This happens too often. What recourse do we have as consumers?
Since I've been the first on the firing squad, I'll go ahead and go again.
Okay.
Internet is not considered a utility, partially because when the Corporation Commission was created, there was no such thing as internet. So we have not caught up to that. There are numerous moves statewide to identify internet as a utility that should be regulated by the Corporation Commission. But as of today, right now, the internet service is considered outside the scope of the ACC. Now that's problematic for a couple of reasons because we all know internet, we can't function without internet. If your office loses internet, everybody gets sent home. We don't have desks with typewriters anymore. Everything is, on the internet. And when you have what's occurring now, which is the push for more cloud-based and internet voice over internet protocol, VoIP, Zoom, all that stuff. Not a lot of people have copper wire telephones any longer, but they're connected. So when you think about rural Arizona and connectivity, you can't talk about internet service without talking also about copper wire telephone solutions. And unfortunately, what we've seen in our state, New Mexico is a little different. Well, New Mexico, they did away with it totally. They said, oh, we're not going to regulate that. Well, what's happened in New Mexico is there is no incentive or no regulatory oversight over telephone any longer, meaning that they don't have to maintain wire lines anymore. So our rural communities in New Mexico get there's no standard operating procedure. So if the phone line goes down and you're in, I don't know, truth or consequences, and you're relying on that for dial-up, guess what? They do not have to meet any sort of standard or deadline in order to fix that, to reconnect you. There are moves by different unions and organizations to put internet underneath the Corporation Commission to address issues like that. So we make sure we don't leave any of our communities without connectivity.
Interesting. I didn't realize that. Jonathan, anything to add?
Yeah, so I'll add that, this is a really good reason why you should pay attention to your state legislature races, because they're the ones who have the power to pass those bills, and by classifying internet as a utility, therefore putting it under the Corporation Commission. So that, unfortunately, that's not something that we could do if we were elected to the commission. We can't, just as we were saying before, you can't and shouldn't just arbitrarily expand your jurisdiction as a body, but the legislature has the authority to give them that jurisdiction. And I think that's just like Clara was mentioning, the copper telephone line. There used to be standards about, if your copper line goes down in a storm or something, they have 24 hours to repair that line and get it functional again. Otherwise, they start facing fines, and they face fines basically for every consumer who is still disconnected after 24 hours. The commission years ago stopped enforcing those rules, and I think that's one reason why it would benefit to have internet classified as a utility, because then they could enforce repair schedules when your internet goes down. If all it takes is someone digging or trenching, or somewhere where they shouldn't, they can cut a fiber optic line, cut a cat line, and suddenly a lot of people are out of internet. But if there's no requirement for the companies to repair it in a timely manner, they might get around to it when they feel like it. Maybe there's only a dozen customers on that line, and so they're not really in a hurry. And because of that, those dozen customers are left out in the cold with no internet, no telephone, if they get telephone over internet. So yeah, I think that's something that's you should actively support your state legislature races for.
Good suggestion. Thank you. Derek, anything to add?
So I'm laughing because we had a lightning strike that knocked out our internet. And I constantly remind my wife about that month we lived without internet. And she reminds me it was 2 days. So 2 days. Yeah, it's not under the ACC. Even a lot of the internet stuff is handled by a municipality. I think there would be some complication too, just legally how they're structured. So here, Cox is organized as what they call franchise. So it's really going to depend when and if the legislature decides to send it over the ACC, that how the wording is phrased, the legalese, so that it all becomes cumulative, and whether the municipalities want to give that up, because usually they're paying the franchise fee to the city. The legislature too, I was watching lovely Mr. Fincham tried to plead with the ACC to give the legislature more power. I do not trust him, so there's always an alternative motive he has of why he wants to take away power from the ACC. But I also caution, and this is kind of out of character for me because I usually have the hot blood ready to go into fight. We have to be careful of who has control. Not even, in recent ACC, who's on there. But 10, 20 years from now, if we turn over the internet to the ACC, let's say within the next couple of rotations, Jonathan, Clara, and I are on there. We have the majority. We're good. We're doing everything awesome. 20 years from now, we can be in the same situation with 5 Republicans, and having everything under them might not be the best idea. If we even have internet then, for whatever reason, technology. The ACC currently, though, in regards to the internet, is doing research on whether or not, because they should have control over data centers as an entirety. And that would, I think, would automatically put internet under them, or they would find a way to word it to get control of that as well.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Okay, thank you. Uh, an interesting comment has been put in the chat by Richard Sigler. There are two websites that are designed to educate people about the ACC, the latter meant to reach more independent and Republican audiences. Um, if any of the three candidates would like to put something into these websites, contact Richard, and his email address is on there. But I would like to copy down the addresses of those sites too, because I'm thinking as we're talking that one of the missions of DOOR, Democrats of the Red Rocks, is to educate our citizens. And we need to educate them more on the Corporation Commission. So I will look into that, Richard, and I appreciate you putting that there. And we will see what we can do to promote the Corporation Commission and what it does even more. I don't see any other questions. So what I would like to do is ask our three candidates to give a 3-minute closing statement, tell why we should vote for you, and anything else, any other parting words that you have for us. And stay in touch with Democrats of the Red Rocks if things come to your attention that you do want us to know about. For example, Clara, if you're going to be here for that Democratic Perspectives radio show, tell us in advance so we can maybe hook up with you and arrange for some other kind of venue that you could speak at as well. So you guys stay in touch with us too. All right, why don't we start with Derek, then we'll go with Clara, and then we will finish it off with Jonathan.
Yeah. So, I mean, like I mentioned earlier, like if I'm the choice for you, if you want someone to be more of an activist, um, I'm out there. Like I mentioned, I'm at the commissions. I'm interacting with the commissioners. I'm interacting at all levels. I'm also taking a look at the other side. In order to win this, we need the Republican and independent votes. So I was recently on a conservative radio show. It was wall-to-wall Trump stuff everywhere. And I was ready for the fight, and there was no fight because one of the co-hosts came in, she also owns a restaurant, came in with her electric bill. So I have an ability to reach across the aisle because, in my opinion, as Democrats, we don't need to concentrate on the primary. We need to win a general. And, for whatever reason, and I do not agree with it, Republicans are viewed as the business experts, and it's absolutely not true. But my background as an accountant gets me in there. It gets me into the conversations. It gets me into the talks of 10Ks and 8Ks and how people are not filing them correctly so we can find the way to get to them. And knowing a bit of math at the recent Chandler data center fight, the owners were trying to say they were trying to pass off bad math, and we were able to call them out on it. And it's just one of the things I want to bring up, because one of my big fights is with the data centers, is that they're also bad business cases. If we remove the environment and the community concerns, which are the important things, it's bad business. They don't make sense. The numbers are off. And so that's where I stand, is trying to fight for the ratepayers and the consumers now, because we have a lot being thrown at us, and I don't know if we can wait till next November. So I'm fighting now. If you want a fighter, I think I'm the person for you.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right. Why don't we have Clara?
Sure. Well, first of all, thanks for being here tonight. More importantly, thank you for showing up for Arizona's future. I'm always impressed to hop on these calls and see how many people are giving of their own time. You could be doing anything, but you're on the Zoom listening to three schmoes talk about corporation commission. So I appreciate that and I applaud that. The decisions made by the Corporation Commission, they touch every household, every small business, every family trying to keep the lights on and plan for tomorrow. They're not abstract decisions. They affect our utility bills, our water security, our clean air, our grid reliability, and whether or not our state is prepared for growth or held back by outdated thinking. And right now we're at a crossroads, a really important crossroads. We are growing fast. Maricopa County is the fastest growing county in the United States. And we're facing real climate and water challenges. And we're navigating a rapidly changing energy economy. Just 3 years ago, we were all celebrating greenhouse gas reduction funds. Well, now they're stuck in court and being litigated as fast as it's making your head spin. So what we need now is practical leadership that's transparent and grounded in the public trust and the public interest. Leadership that can understand the technical realities and the human impact of regulation. So I believe deeply that we can protect ratepayers and build a resilient, affordable, and clean energy future. We can respect workers, we can honor tribal sovereignty, we can support innovation, we can ensure accountability, and we can do all those things without forcing families to choose between affordability and sustainability. We can do hard things. We can do this together if we do it in a measured way. And the commission should work for the people of Arizona, full stop. They're not there for the utilities. They're not there to make friends with investors of the utilities. They're there for the people of Arizona. And I'm committed to bringing that integrity and that transparency and that experience and the steady leadership to this role, listening first, asking hard questions, making decisions that are guided by facts, fairness, and the long-term vision for the future. Again, just thank you for your time and your trust and belief in what Arizona can be. I know that we can together make a huge change with these five people, two of them up for election. Arguably, I feel like I'm pandering a little bit, but arguably it's like the most important seat on the ballot, and yet we have folks that don't know what the Corporation Commission is. It's the one that really impacts us every single day. And when I talk to family, neighbors, friends, community, they're always like, darn that APS, darn that SRB, darn all these utilities. And I'm like, their utilities are going to utility. You know what I mean? They're going to do what they're going to do. The commission needs to commission. That's where we need to bring some sanity back to it. So thank you guys for your time. I appreciate it.
Oh,
Jonathan, why don't we hear from you next?
okay. I was guessing you were calling on me, even though I could see your mouth move.
I was
Uh,
muted because my husband is the loudest sneezer ever, and he is right outside my office sneezing his brains out. So I had to mute myself. Sorry.
that's okay.
Okay.
So yeah, so once again, as everyone said, thank you all for coming out tonight and hearing us and just getting informed about what the commission is. And I think it was Kathy that brought it up earlier. One of the things I warn people about is if they don't know what the commission is, they really need to get involved and get knowledgeable and educate themselves before something goes wrong in their community. Because so many times around Arizona, I've seen you go to a meeting and everybody knows what the commission is because something has gone wrong, but at that point it's already too late. And you have to do damage control fixing these issues, and so you really have to be proactive about dealing with the commission. And I think, you know, as we've talked about, simple things, bringing fact-based decision making to the commission, bringing basic ethics to the commission, we could change so much so quickly. Even if we don't have immediately, a majority of seats, we can do so much. And so I'll end with throwing in the pitch, kind of for all three of us. We really need those signatures to get on the ballot. In the past, the Democrats have struggled to put forward enough candidates to fill the seats. That's the last thing we want to happen. The fact that we have three candidates is great. Abundance of riches. So I would really encourage you, whoever you like tonight, to go out and sign our petitions, and also give us those $5. That's what made it possible when I ran in 2024. That clean elections money. Once we qualify for that, we get $333,000 to run our campaign across the state, and you can do a lot with $333,000. But we only get that if we qualify. And so when you give us those $5, that becomes $250 once the state matches it. So I could be here tonight asking everyone to send in a check for $250, but I won't do that. I'll just ask for the five, and the state will cover the rest. So, and then finally, I'll just reiterate, we need your help. We really need to educate people about the importance of the commission. And that really can't be done with billboards and Facebook ads. It has to be done person to person. And so I'd really encourage you to have a conversation. And I know it's scary, but have a conversation with your neighbors, your friends, your family. And you don't even have to get into politics. You can just say, hey, this is, my bill is going up because of that water retention project, in Sedona. Did you know it's not the water company doing that? It's the Corporation Commission. I went to this meeting and I learned about this body that we can vote for. You don't have to tell them it was a Democrat meeting even. And help us educate people, because I think the more people get educated, the better our chances as Democrats, because I think it's very clear to the educated voter who to choose.
Great. Thank you very much. We will do our part to help you guys. If if you have the chat open and you go all the way up to the very top of the chat, there is a link and a little bit of directions about how you can go to the Secretary of State's website, Equal site. You can sign a petition, and then separately sign up for the $5 contributions. You will have to do that for each candidate. In other words, it will hit your credit card for one person, and then you have to go back in and hit your credit card again for another $5. And your credit card company will think, what the hell's going on there? But it's important that you do that because, as Jonathan said, you're multiplying the money. So, listen, I want to thank you all for being here. We appreciate it. The people who tuned in, I'm glad that you were here and appreciate your interest. And for our candidates, this is terrific. We will support you however we can. And everybody have a wonderful holiday season, and we will see you next year. All right. Thank you so much for being here. And thank